You know, it's one of those deals where you raise your hand to God and say, I swear. And they've been violating that for, well, 100 years, at least. So all of a sudden, we're going to give them a new piece of paper that has no history, no legal precedence, nothing to go by. It's all new now. And they're going to obey it. And they're going to obey it the way we want. All right? Now, the other thing I want to make a quick note of is he's talking about the extent of the convention and how limited it's going to be. I have a concurrent resolution, and this isn't hypothetical. This thing's been filed. It's from South Carolina. From South Carolina here. And here's what they're asking for. They want to propose amendments to the United States Constitution that impose fiscal restraints, all right? Now, let's see, that would be Article 1, some of Article 1. The third is limit terms of office for its officials for the members of Congress. All right, so that's Article 1 again, I guess. And the second one is limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Can anybody tell me what the purpose is of the Constitution? What it does?
It limits the power.
It limits the power and authority of the federal government. Now, somebody can say, well, but the Convention of States doesn't say that, right? They don't say that. That's these nutty people in South Carolina. That's where Graham comes from, Senator Graham, right? Well, let me read out here the application. This is the Convention of States handbook for legislators and citizens, and it's application for Convention of the States. And their motto request says, impose physical restraints on federal government. It's even phrased the same way. Limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Right? So let's look at that here for a second. Roger, can you help me just a second? I'll move this mic. I just want to look at that, what that means. Now, the authority for Congress in setting up Congress and legislature is in Article 1, okay, of the Constitution. We only have 7 articles, right? God gave us one for each day. So Article 1, we're going to amend that. The second one is the authority and jurisdiction of the president. So we got to amend that, right? We're going to look at that, all right? So then we have Article 3. It's to establish the judiciary and the authority of the judiciary. Well, that has got to be amended, right? And that's part of it. So there we go. Now we have Article 5, and they're going to change that because they're going to try to give more power to the states, change the balance of the republic. They're going to change that as well. Article 6 relates to debts contracted before the Constitution. That doesn't apply, right? So that doesn't apply. And Article 7 is the original ratification for this Constitution because they didn't use the ratification requirements under the Articles of Confederation. They get to stay, all right? Now, no one's proposing this, but my gosh, we're going to do that. Let's just go ahead and get that Declaration of Independence and do something yet. So that's what they're saying. It's going to be limited. It's going to be limited to a subject. The subject is the authority of the federal government. That's all the Constitution is about, right? The Constitution doesn't give us any rights whatsoever. The Bill of Rights did nothing for us. It restricted the federal government, and what they're going to do is change the jurisdiction and authority of the federal government, and that opens up the entire Constitution for amendment. This is a resolution for Article 5. It was filed in South Carolina, and it says this is what they want to do at the convention. They want to impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, and they want to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and they want to limit the terms of office for its officials and members of Congress. Can anybody tell me what the Constitution does? What's the purpose of the Constitution? To set the limits of the jurisdiction and authority of the federal government. That's what it's for. That's what the Constitution is for, all right? Now, some of you are gonna say, oh, but that's those nutty South Carolina people, that's, Senator Graham, and those kind of nutcakes. So, you can't blame the Conference of States. Let's go to their manual and see what they say about this. They have a model application. And ALEC has their own model application on that. So let's see what they say about it. What their model application says, the purpose is to impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for federal officials and members of Congress. It's verbatim, right? So this is what they're advocating. So let's look at this. Let's look at what this means. How many articles do we have in the Constitution? Does anybody know?
8.
No. The Lord gave us one for every day of the week.
7.
Okay. So the first one, they talk about fiscal restraints. So really, they're talking about this. The last one, they're talking about term limits for the office and for officials, for the members of Congress. So again, they're talking about this. All right, well, let's look at this. Limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Number one, it sets up the authority and jurisdiction of Congress, right? So that's got to go. And number two sets up the jurisdiction and authority of the president, right? So that's up for amendment. Number three sets up the judiciary, right? There we go. Now, this relates to the federal government, among other things, the federal government protecting our Republican status and from invasion. That's got to go. But this is amending the Constitution. They're going to change that because they want to give the states a shortcut to do that. So that's got to go. Oh my. Right, and here we go, that's got to go. So this, which is moot because this is the ratification, the original ratification that they used for our Constitution, rather than using Articles of Confederation, which they were supposed to do. What does that tell you?
Next question.
Do I get a chance to respond?
Yes, go ahead, David.
Certainly a few things there. Obviously, I'm not going to take out my Constitution and start ripping it up because I believe in my Constitution. And certainly, I understand the playing on fears as far as ripping up the Constitution, but it's far from that. I want to preserve that Constitution. I want to make a few loopholes that are being exploited in that Constitution eliminated, and the fact that the Congress Clause, for one, is one I mentioned earlier. Just like every other thing and every other fight that we have in front of us, all those fights that he mentioned are all worthy of our time, including this one. This is a worthwhile cause, and that's why I support it. It is a solution big enough to tackle a lot of the problems at the federal level. Again, it doesn't tackle much at the state level, except for getting people to understand and recognize who their state representatives and state senators are, because all of a sudden, in this process, the states have a lot more power, and those states' reps and state senators all of a sudden mean more to those individuals. They're not just another person that goes to Topeka. They're a person that actually can wield some power in Washington. And that's what we're proposing.
I did study the Constitution when I was in high school in 1959. I have my little knowledge with me. Thank you.
Okay. What is to keep the president, who has been ignoring our present Constitution,
Yes.
from ignoring this one?
It's a very good question because, Senator Roberts addressed what the president talked about today. I mean, we've got a lawless presidents out there right now threatening to use his pen and a telephone to subvert Congress. So what's going to stop him from, ignoring new amendments? It's a problem that we're gonna face no matter if we go down our road or not. We need to deal with that. We definitely do. It's the rule of law, and he's subject to the rule of law just like anybody else. We need to hold him accountable. Convention of the State isn't going to hold him accountable. That's the people need to definitely do that.